All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. I'm back here again with my co-host Trevor Kaufman, and we have, once again, quite a bit to talk about. We got Major League Baseball in full swing with the World Series going on right now. We have some NBA news that we want to talk about later in the podcast, and we also have the NFL in full swing with the full slate of games going on each week. And so, with that, I wanted to start off with talking about some baseball. So, in the MLB, the Dodgers and the Rays have been going at it in the World Series thus far, and the Dodgers currently lead the series 3-2. Now, this is really interesting because a lot of people probably think that the Dodgers should have already won the World Series. A lot of people probably think the Dodgers should have won in 5 games. But in Game 4, one of the craziest games I've ever seen in baseball history, in my memory, the Dodgers had 2 errors on a single play
hmm
in the bottom of the ninth and choked the game, and the Rays scored the winning run. Um, and they ended up tying the series 2-2, and then the Dodgers took Game 5, and here we are going into Game 6 this evening with the Dodgers ahead 3-2. So, Trevor, I wanted to start off by asking you, do you think those errors are going to come back to bite the Dodgers, or are you still confident that they will be able to pull out this series?
It's looking like they're going to pull out this series.
Okay.
Game four was definitely something unlike anything I've ever seen, baseball wise. But yeah, as we said, the Rays are a good team. They deserve to be here. They had the best record in the AL, and of course, that was a crazy play. But again, the Dodgers are still in control of the series. They're showing why they're the best team in baseball. If it wasn't for that game four blooper, the Dodgers theoretically would have won the World Series already. So I think they actually close it out tonight in six. It's been a really entertaining World Series, don't get me wrong. I thought Kershaw had a great game five for them as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, the Dodgers are still in control of the series, and I think they close it out tonight in six.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably agree with you. I mean, it's going to be interesting tonight because we have 2 really nice pitchers going at it tonight. I believe we have Blake Snell for the Rays,
Mm-hmm.
who's been fantastic over his
He
career.
has been.
And last year he had a bit of an off year, but this year he bounced back and he had a 3.2 ERA. And but you also have the Dodgers with Tony Gonsolin, who has a 2.3 ERA, which I mean, wow. I mean, what a show! What a season from him. It was only 46 innings, so limited time.
Mm-hmm.
More in emergency relief, it seems, pitching about 2 to 5 innings on average. But still, it's going to be interesting to see who wins that starting pitching battle because more often than not, that's seemingly who resulted in winning the game. I mean, you look at Game 5 here, and no one scored in Game 5 past the 5th inning, and the Dodgers ended up winning
Right.
4-2 off of Clayton Kershaw having a really solid game. So I would agree. I think the Dodgers will pull this one out. If not in Game 6, I think they'll pull it out in Game 7. But
Mm-hmm.
no matter what happens, I mean, I think the Rays. Show that they can contend with a team like the Dodgers, and I think that we were talking about how will a team with like the Dodgers, with the whole, you know, the payroll being astronomically high, will they beat a Rays team who has a really, really low and small payroll in comparison? Uh, you
Right.
know, it ended up being a close series. So I'm glad for baseball that it ended up being a fun and close series, no matter what happens. If the Rays come back and win, that'd be awesome. But if the Dodgers
Mm-hmm.
win also, it still shows that a team can succeed and not have a ton of money on their payroll.
I couldn't agree more with what you just said. I actually want to ask you a question,
Yeah,
obviously, since you know more baseball than I do.
sure.
Do you think with Gonsolin tonight, do they treat him more like a? Are the Dodgers going to basically do this thing where sometimes you see in playoff games, maybe they have a starter go 3 or 4 innings, and they start bringing in a ton of different relievers for most of the game? Or do you think Gonsolin goes 5 or 6 innings? Or because I was thinking, you said he's a emergency relief kind of guy, only pitched 46 innings this year.
Mm-hmm.
What if the Dodgers treat it like that? They want 3 strong innings out of him tonight, and then they start going into the bullpen for the rest of the game.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So Gonsolin, to me, I mean, seemingly he's been used in sort of like a guy who will make an emergency few starts, right? Like I said, and
Mm-hmm.
but he won't pitch deep
Mm-hmm.
into games. Now, typically the best pitchers will pitch deep into games. I don't think they're going to do that with Gonsolin, and they haven't been doing that with their pitchers in the last 2 games. Kershaw only went 5 2/3, and then Urias went 4 2/3 in the previous game. So these pitchers for the Dodgers are not going deep into games, even when pitching well. Each of them only gave up 2 runs apiece, and they combined, I
Hmm.
believe, struck out 15. So like they're pitching well. They're just not keeping their starters in deep into games. I suspect they're going to do a similar thing tonight, but I wouldn't be horribly surprised if Gonsolin's pitching well. They let him go an extra inning or two because they have, as I said, brought bullpen guys in pretty early on in these past 2 games, so they might want them to rest for a night, or some of their arms to rest. Um, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think it'll end up coming down to who gets off to a faster start in this game,
Hmm.
who can get a few early runs, because that's to me one of the most important things in a baseball playoff game. Who can get off to that quickest start? Who can break through
Right.
against that starter first? Because a lot of times, the first time through the rotation, these batters are trying to just get a feel for the pitcher, trying to not necessarily. I mean, they're of course always trying to score runs, but you kind of want to feel out the pitcher and see, what's going to work for you and how you can get on base. So we'll see who can get off to the quickest start tonight.
Can't wait to watch.
Yeah, and I don't know, Trevor, if you have any other thoughts, but if not, I think we
Only
can.
other thought has nothing to do with the game itself. I was just thinking from a sports fan's perspective.
Yeah.
Game 6 tonight, game 7 tomorrow, football Thursday,
Mm.
nothing really on Friday, football Saturday, NFL Sunday, NFL Monday. So if we could get a game 6 and a game 7, get 6 straight days of sports stuff,
Mm.
that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah,
No,
that'd be
I
awesome.
don't really know why I brought that up. I was just
No,
thinking
I mean
about
that's great. I mean it's a good point because
that.
I mean we have a lot of sports on right now, and maybe a few months ago, back in remember in the dog days of May and June, we might have thought maybe we wouldn't be having all these sports going on right now, but here we are in spite of it all. So that's a good point.
Exactly.
It's fun to have it all. All right. Can I say one more thing real quick? I just wanted to point
Yeah,
out
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
just one quick player before we move on. I wanted to point out Corey Seager. I think he's been fantastic this year. Uh, he's been stepping up big time for the Dodgers in the playoffs. He has 8 home runs, 19 RBIs in the postseason, and he's batting about 330, I believe. And
Wow.
yeah, it's been fantastic. And on the season, he also played very well. Batted 307, had 15 homers and 41 RBIs. Both of those numbers are tied for 15th in the MLB. So he's really stepped up for the Dodgers. And I know they're a loaded team, but I just wanted to call him out
Hmm.
because I thought he had a really nice year this year, and he's stepped up big time in the playoffs. So I just wanted to call out Corey Seager there. And yeah, with that, I think we can move on from these games, and we'll see what happens in the next 1 or 2 games of the series, and we'll get our World Series champion. And so I wanted to move on, Trevor, and talk about just a quick news update in the NBA. We have some things going on in regards to players opting in or opting out of contracts. Now we have people like Anthony Davis who are going to opt out and seemingly
Sign an
re-sign with the
extension. Great.
yeah re-sign with the Lakers for a massive deal. You'd assume so, barring some crazy turn of events. Um,
Right.
and then you have a guy like Gordon Hayward who you would think on paper he'd want to stay with the Boston Celtics, but there have been reports floating around in the NBA rumor mill that suggest that maybe Gordon Hayward wants to leave Boston. I don't know. And Trevor, I mean, do you think he should leave Boston?
No, I don't. And I think Gordon Hayward needs to realize what he is. And I think his ego's getting in the way here of this decision. Gordon Hayward is going to be your third or fourth best player on a championship team. You got Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker, Jalen Brown, Mark. I guess he might be the fifth best player on Boston. I don't really know. He is a starter. But for me, he already has a really large deal with the Celtics. He's on a championship contending team. He's a contributor. I mean, he contributes 16, 18 points a night on average. So it's not like he's doing nothing for this team. But I don't know if he wants to opt out because he thinks he's a one or a two. I don't really know. I think his ego's getting in the way of this decision, and I absolutely do not think he should opt out unless he's going to do an Anthony Davis and sign for a larger or for a bigger contract, which I don't really see that happening with him. But yeah, this decision doesn't make much sense to me, especially if he wants to leave Boston. I don't get that whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's fair. I wanted to point out that he's actually on pace to earn $34 million next year from his player option.
Yeah, like
So
how much more money do you
it,
want?
it's a ridiculous amount of money, and I kind of wanted to disagree with you a little bit in the sense of I think that for Gordon Hayward, a guy who he's been through a lot, right? He had a crazy injury against the Cavs in
Right.
2017, and he signed a massive deal with Boston a few years back, and I don't think it's panned out the way he thought. So he's getting paid a lot of money. And I
Mhm.
understand that, but I think Gordon Hayward, for himself, I think he wants to get more playing time, get a higher usage rate. So when he was in Utah, he was getting about a 26 to 27% usage rate, which means he was handling the ball a lot with Utah. And with Boston, he's had under a 20% usage rate, meaning he's just not getting involved as much as he was. Now, I'm not saying that. He should leave. I'm just saying I believe that that's probably why he wants to leave. And I think, you know, if he wants, to go on a team with a bigger role, he's gonna have to accept the fact that it's gonna have to be probably a pretty bad team. I don't think at
I
this stage,
agree. I was
I don't,
just about to
yeah. So
say.
I don't think at this stage of Gordon Hayward's career is he going to go to a team like Portland or like Golden State or like
Or the Lakers. I mean,
yeah, and just waltz right in and be like, all right, let me be the number one or even the number two guy. Like I don't think that's going to happen. But I think if he does do that and he doesn't really mind losing out on money, then I mean, I think that more power to him. Maybe you can have some more fun playing basketball. Maybe he just wants to, get in a different area and just enjoy himself more. So I don't really know. I don't think it's smart from a business perspective, but I think if he wants to, get more, touch the ball more, get more points, boost his stats a little bit, just enjoy himself more. Maybe he goes somewhere else. But it's all about what he would rather have. So that's
so
kind of
your
my take.
argument is Gordon Hayward is a little baby and is upset that he is not getting the ball as much in Boston. I mean, how dumb of an argument is that? You're getting paid 34 million a year. You're on a team that was very close to going to the NBA finals last year. You're a starter. It's not like he's a bench warmer. He starts, he plays significant minutes for that team, and he gets a good amount of usage. I don't understand this idea of look, he is not good enough to carry a team. He's not good enough to be a number one on a championship team. That's obvious. He's not even good enough to be a number two on a championship team. He has to be a solid number three, and he can be a solid number 3 or 4 on a championship team. And he's making number one money. I mean, he's making 34 million a year. That's max money, basically. So for me, it makes absolutely no sense. You have all the money in the world. You're on a championship team and you play a lot. I just don't see where I just don't get where's a better fit for Gordon Hayward. I don't understand unless he's
Okay.
a little baby, like I just
Okay,
said.
okay, listen, I don't want to give off this impression that I think Gordon Hayward's kind of a baby, like you say. I think that it's just a matter of priority, and people can make fun of these
Well,
players.
all right.
Yeah, 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 and people can make fun of
But
these
his
players all they
priorities
want.
are all filled, except for the fact that he's not the main guy on a team. I mean, he literally
Yes,
has everything he could want.
that's right. And why do guys like Kyrie? Why are they so unhappy consistently? And I'm not in no way saying Gordon Hayward's like Kyrie in terms of attitude. I'm just saying there are guys like this who in their heads, they believe, oh, this team can win without me. I just can't fathom that. And they have trouble leading, and they bolt, and they go to a team that needs them, and they know needs them, and they're
Here's what
happy.
I will say. Okay.
They're
Yeah.
happy being needed. I don't think he should leave, but I if he doesn't care about uh, winning a championship, as seriously or as money, like if he just wants to be selfish and get more stats and more usage, then he could go somewhere else. I don't think it's smart.
Mhm.
I don't think it's smart though. I want to be clear. I don't think it's the smart decision.
I agree. And here's the thing: what I can say about Kyrie Irving is
Hmm.
Kyrie Irving at least went from one championship team to another. And that Boston team that he was on, it was a very good team, and they made the playoffs. I just feel like, and Kyrie Irving's a much better player than Gordon Hayward. Let's not get that twisted either. But for me, I don't get like I don't know. I just don't really see it with Gordon Hayward here. I'm just very confused as to why you would want to leave this situation. And if it's your argument, then I lose a little bit of respect for Gordon Hayward because clearly his priorities are he wants to be the guy, which is very selfish, and he clearly doesn't care about winning because he's on a team that can win, as I said, tomorrow or what next year. Jason Tatum's coming into his own, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker. That is a very, very good Boston team. And he is a large part on that team, as I keep saying. So for me, this makes absolutely no sense. $34 million a year also. I mean, all right, pass that money up. I'll take some of it. Screw it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would lose a little bit of respect for Hayward if his reasoning was in line with what you were saying, Ryan.
Hmm.
But
Interesting.
whatever. Some people are just like that. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
I agree. If I was a fan of the Celtics, I'd be like really frustrated as I was with Kyrie. It's like, why are you bolting from a situation that makes perfect sense championship wise and money wise?
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make sense. So I totally see that from that perspective. I've gone through the same thing. But then again, I mean, clearly these players, some of them can be unpredictable. And I'm even seeing that the Indiana Pacers have heard some rumblings that Hayward might want out and have expressed trade interest in him. So I mean, maybe that's a way he
Okay.
keeps his money
That would be a decent fit.
and
I wouldn't be too mad about that.
so if he keeps his contract, he gets to opt in, but he gets to go to Indiana. So maybe that would be an opportunity for him, or maybe something that Hayward could do. But I'm not really sure. I think it could be a decent fit, but I don't think Indiana is going to get over the hump with Gordon Hayward on their team.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, Ryan. I think that will conclude NBA discussion. And now to get
Cool.
into the meat and potatoes of today's podcast is some NFL games. And I know you and I talked a little bit on the phone last night about some games that we particularly wanted to talk about. So I'll hand it off to you. I know you're very, very excited to kick off the NFL discussion with this game. So I'll hand it off to you to give your thoughts.
Yeah, so I wanted to start off the NFL discussion by talking about, I'm going to go back to talking about my Browns. I know it's been a few weeks since I've
Oh, no,
talked.
we've never talked about them before.
But this week, I think it was warranted, even if I wasn't a Browns fan. I think that the Browns, they defeated the Cincinnati Bengals by a score of 37-34. And I just wanted
Jesus.
to,
Oof.
yeah, and okay, I wanted to talk about what a crazy game this was. So going in, this game was, in my eyes, always going to be pretty close. The Cleveland defense has struggled all year outside of Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. It has holes in the linebacking core. As I said last week, it has holes in the secondary outside of Denzel Ward. And I just thought it was going to be trouble. And turns out I was right. Joe Burrow looked good. He threw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a QBR of 84. He did have 2 turnovers, which ended up costing them mightily in this game. But overall, Burrow did look good. He made some precise throws. He stood in the pocket, wasn't afraid to take pressure like he's been taking all year with his beat up offensive line. And,
Mm-hmm.
he made some nice throws. I will say he's extremely accurate in the 5 to 15 yard range. I want to see one thing from Burrow as the year progresses. I want to see Burrow throw down the field more. I don't see a lot of airing it out 20 plus yards downfield. And I get a lot of quarterbacks don't do that a lot, but I just wanted to see him make the next step and just at least attempt some of those deep throws, maybe to AJ Green or T. Higgins. So hopefully he incorporates that more as the year goes on. But otherwise, he looks really nice. He looked poised. He looked like a second or third year guy out there. And I will say he got no help from his rushing attack. I mean, Joe Mixon was out. And Giovanni Bernard had 37 yards on 13 carries. I mean, that's just abysmal. So he got really no help there. And then on the Cleveland side, I think the story here is Baker Mayfield. And people are gonna laugh and say, "Wow, it's just one game. It's the Cincinnati Bengals," and they are right. It is the Cincinnati Bengals, but Baker Mayfield, without a doubt, looked like the guy that Cleveland Browns wanted. And it's a very strange year. Baker has looked horrible in 2 games, and he's looked pretty good in the other games. So it's really strange. It's a really strange year in terms of evaluating Baker Mayfield. I would say he's taken a slight step forward, but overall, he's still been inconsistent. So hopefully, as the year goes on, we see Baker become more consistent and make plays against better teams. But I mean, you can't doubt how good he was against the Bengals. He went 22 for 22 at one point after starting the game over 5, and his 6th incompletion was a spike to stop the clock. I mean, the guy was just unstoppable after the first quarter, and yeah, it was fantastic to see. QBR 97, almost perfect. And I also wanted to point out Rashard Higgins, a guy who's going to have to step up big time for Odell Beckham Jr., who tore his ACL in this game. I really feel bad for Odell, by the way. That's really tough for anybody. But Rashard Higgins, I think, is going to have to step up big time. Great connection with Baker Mayfield, and he showcased it in this game with some big time catches, 6 catches for 110 yards, and I think he's going to be a name to keep an eye on in the NFL and in fantasy football. If anyone plays that, he's a name to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with a lot of what you just said. If I'm Browns fans, I'm very concerned about my defense, especially if you have playoff aspirations. If you have 6-win aspirations, and whatever. I mean, the defense is the defense, but the defense looked horrible. I loved what I saw from Joe Burrow yesterday. He was getting lit up. That O line did not hold up at all for him. I thought Myles Garrett, he's a beast, by the way. He is so damn good.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, if I'm Bengals fans though, I absolutely love what I've seen from Burrow so far. I know you're 1-5-1, but hey, you knew you were going to lose a lot of games this year. Anybody who thought the Bengals were going to be a 7 or 8 win team, dumb. I've
Yeah.
said it this entire time. This was a 4-win Bengals team. Joe Burrow has been even better than I thought he would be. And
Mhm.
I do want to talk a lot about Baker Mayfield because he seems to always be a topic of discussion for good or for bad. And yesterday he reminded me a little bit of I'm trying to think like a Tim Tebow or Jeremy Lin, where he just caught fire. Tim Tebow caught fire for a few games one year. Jeremy Lin caught fire for a few games one year, and Baker Mayfield caught fire yesterday. I mean, he looked great against one of the worst teams in the NFL, and he's looked great against bad teams his entire career. But I think the big question mark with Baker Mayfield is, and this is kind of switching gears into whether Baker Mayfield's the guy in Cleveland. He definitely looked like the guy yesterday. I think the bigger discussion is when will Baker Mayfield show up against a team not named the Cincinnati Bengals or the other sorry teams the Browns have beaten this year? I mean, you and I have talked about it. They have the easiest schedule in football in a pretty hard division. They have a hard division. Outside of their division, really, really easy games across the board. And what has Baker done against two good NFL teams? I should say two elite NFL teams, two teams that will contend for the Super Bowl. He's looked pathetic. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. Pathetic. So I want to see Baker against a good team play like he did yesterday. Carry your team to a victory. That's what a number one pick does. That's what a franchise QB does. So yesterday changed absolutely nothing for me about Baker Mayfield. It was a lucky win against a really bad team. And yeah, that's all I got to say about him. I know you look, your face is a little, it's
I just
there's definitely fire behind those eyes as I rip Baker a new one.
I just want to dispel a couple falsehoods that I feel were I just want to say that I think that for a player to, be doubted, right? And rightfully so. He has struggled in games this year. To go out and have 5 touchdowns and 22 straight completions, I think no matter who it's against, 22 straight completions, you have to say, I just think it's hard to say, I didn't think any
Okay,
better.
you're right. You're right. But
I didn't think
also,
any
who
better of
who
him.
else has done that? Ryan Fitzpatrick is a perfect example of a guy who
Of
can do that on a. He's a perfect example of a guy who could have a brilliant game, and he's the
yes,
most average quarterback in the NFL. He's
yep,
been traded to 10
yep,
different teams, and if that's what Baker Mayfield is, then great. He had a terrific game, and he looked unbelievable yesterday. But if you want Baker Mayfield to turn
yeah,
into, to
yeah,
turn into a franchise quarterback, he's got to be able to do it against somebody other than the Cincinnati Bengals. And I
yeah.
think that's the knock on him. Nobody's going to
Well,
take away that game. He was absolutely brilliant yesterday. I thought Stefanski also did a great job with the play calling, particularly early in that second quarter where he was struggling, got some quick throws, got him rolling out of the pocket, some bootlegs. So I thought the play calling was really good to get him going.
mhm.
But I will say, I think the knock on Baker Mayfield, and again, this is not trying to take away yesterday's performance. He was absolutely fantastic yesterday. Is do it consistently and do it against a team that doesn't suck. And I think
Yeah.
we haven't seen that yet.
So for me, the difference, and we'll move on in a second, but the difference for me, Trevor, is Baker Mayfield's 24 or 25. Ryan Fitzpatrick's 40 years old. So the difference for me is a guy like Baker, and I've talked about this with Trevor a bunch off the podcast. Baker Mayfield's had 4 coaches in 3 years. I think that plays a factor in a young
Mm-hmm.
quarterback's
Agree
development.
with that. Agree
I
with
think
that.
that you cannot find another young quarterback in today's NFL that has had that many coaches in that short period of a time and that succeeded immediately. I think that that's nearly impossible to find a young quarterback who has had 4 coaches in such a short span and has become an elite quarterback during that time. So I want to say one more thing, and then we'll move on. I think it's important to point out that he did in fact improve in his games against the Bengals from last year to this year. Trevor says Baker only has great games against bad teams. Well, I would argue last year he was bad against the bad team. The Bengals last year, we
Does
went
that make my argument or make your argument?
well, what it says is he's shown improvement. What it says is he's shown improvement. So last year he threw for about 450 yards. He had 3 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. against the Bengals in 2 games last year. This year, Baker Mayfield threw for over 500 yards against the Bengals in 2 games, and
Mm-hmm.
he had 7 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. To
Okay.
me, if that's not improvement, I don't know what is. So for me, as a coach of the Browns or as a Browns fan, I see improvement against a bad team, albeit a bad team, right? It's a bad team. We can both agree.
Mm-hmm.
It's marked improvement. The guy threw 3 less interceptions, and he threw what is that?
Four
Four
more
more
touchdowns, I
touchdowns.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a very big difference from one year to the next. So I think that sort of thing gives me a little bit of confidence in Baker. And I've said this as well. He could very well be a bust. He very well could be. He has looked like it before, but you have to see it through with the coaching staff. So we'll see what happens. We're going to be talking about this throughout the season, I'm sure. A great game from Baker, a terrible game from Baker. Where is he looking? Will he be the guy? We won't really know until the end of the season where the Browns finish in the playoffs and what happens in the offseason. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see if Baker can, be consistent. And
All right. And
yeah,
I guess we're going to move on to my game.
yep.
Been very excited to talk about this one since it screaming at my TV all Sunday night watching this one. The Seahawks and the Cardinals, arguably the game of the year. I think it is the game of the year.
Mm,
Just the twists and turns in that game.
mm,
But there's so much to unpack here. I don't even know where to start. I'm going to start with the quarterback duel of Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson. And Kyler Murray outplayed him. I thought Kyler Murray played a better game. Um, he only threw 1 interception, Russ threw 3. I thought Kyler Murray was just as effective running the ball as Wilson was, which we would have thought that would be like, something Kyler Murray is a little bit better at is his ability to run. And I mean, look, Seattle's defense is not very good either. I mean, that was exploited on Sunday night, but I got to give Kyler Murray a lot of credit. Second year guy out of Oklahoma. He's looking like he's the guy. And I've been saying it since the start of the season. But he is officially back in. I don't know if I took him out of the MVP discussion momentarily, but I said it at the beginning of the year. He was in the MVP discussion, and he is once again back in the MVP discussion. He's had a terrific year. He was unbelievable Sunday night. His ability
mm.
to lead that game-winning or that game-tying field goal drive down by 3, 34-31, and then to him, 57 seconds, no timeouts. We go down the field. Zane kicks the field goal. In overtime, goes down the field. Zane misses the field goal. We luckily get a second chance, goes down the field again. Zane makes the field goal. Kyler's ability to just will us to victory was incredible yesterday. A couple other small details. I thought our defense, horrendous in the first half, really stepped up in the second half and overtime. Forced 2 interceptions, only gave up 7 points after halftime, which is, something to be said. I thought Vance Joseph called a more aggressive game in the second half. I felt like he was too conservative. He was only rushing 4, and we were playing a lot of zone coverage. And when we weren't playing zone, Tyler Lockett was eating man-to-man against Drake Kirkpatrick. And I felt like Vance Joseph needed to put some pressure on Wilson. I think we got 2 sacks on him between the fourth quarter and overtime. So calling a little bit more pressure definitely threw them off. One final point, great play by DK Metcalf. And I thought somebody brought up a great point that's not coaching. You don't coach that kind of motor, that kind of engine, that kind of will to victory. And, we can talk about how athletic that was all the way, for an hour. We can talk about how athletic of a play that was. But I think it tells more about his, his mental focus and his mental, how engaged he is and
Has mental
how
fortitude.
badly how badly he wants to win. That was arguably the defensive play of the year, and he's on offense. And just a great game between 2 playoff teams. Dare I say it? I don't want to jinx it as a Cardinals fan.
Yeah, I get it.
But I want to hear what you have to say because I don't even feel like I covered everything in that
Yeah,
5-minute
so
discussion.
yeah, no, I mean you covered a lot, but for me, there were a few takeaways I had. One, I think that again, I want to point out something is wrong to me with the NFL, more so the NBA, but the NFL as well. When you have a guy like Russell Wilson in the MVP discussion, the MVP favorite, dare I say, and then you have guys like, he's throwing 7 interceptions on the season, which is the same as guys like Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray, I would argue, isn't really even in a serious MVP discussion nationally. These guys, these national pundits, they'll talk up Kyler Murray. They'll say he's a great quarterback or he's going to be a great quarterback. Wow, he's coming into his own. But these guys are never really seriously going to say, we're going to vote for Kyler Murray for MVP, no matter how well he
Oh,
does
it's
this year.
Wilson's. It's Wilson's
Yeah.
MVP.
Yeah.
I'm saying
No,
Kyler Murray is
no, no, no.
in the top five right now.
Well, I'm not even going to argue that. My point being is, even when Wilson struggles, he throws 3 interceptions in a game against a bad secondary. The national media is going to be like, oh, well, I mean, he almost willed his team to victory. And it's like, well, Russell had major mistakes as well. I mean, he threw
He
an
did.
interception in overtime. I
He
mean,
did. It was a
now
really bad play
now I will
on
say
his part.
the touchdown was called back that DK Metcalf had in overtime. So that was a little bit
A little bit of luck here and
little,
there.
little bit unlucky, although I would say it was a pretty fair call by the refs. I think that was probably a penalty on David Moore there. But
Hmm.
but the point being, I mean, I just think that sometimes the national media overlooks some players' struggles and overemphasizes others. So that's kind of a thing that I have. But for me, this game was kind of just the Cardinals just seemingly outplaying the Seahawks down the stretch. It was kind of an opposite of what
Oh,
we've
I have another good point, but go ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead. I was
well,
about to say.
it was kind of the opposite of what we've seen from the Seahawks in the past, where they kind of struggle early on, they get down in a hole, and
Hmm.
Wilson wills them back to victory. On Sunday night, it was the opposite. I mean, the Cardinals just willed themselves back into this game. I thought it might have been over when it was 10-0. They had all the momentum. The
Oh
Cardinals were
boy,
struggling.
I was worried.
Yeah, and but at the end of the day, the Cardinals came back, and I wanted to shout out. I mean, Chase Edmonds, because Chase Edmonds, Kenny
Mhm.
Drake goes down with a pretty major leg injury, and Chase Edmonds comes into the game and he plays fantastic. 7 catches for 87 yards. I mean, he is really elusive. He is really nice weapon out of the backfield, and in the run game, he only had 5 carries, but he almost had 60 yards. And to me,
Mhm.
as a Cardinals fan or as a coach, you have to think about when Kenny Drake gets healthy, is he still the starter? I've had
Good
my doubt.
question.
Now I've had my doubts for a while. I really have. I think Drake, and going into the season, I thought he was a little overhyped. I thought he didn't have quite the explosiveness and the elusiveness, or even the power that a running. No real big tool that popped out to me. And I think Edmonds has a tool that pops out to me, and he's just hard to tackle. He's
He
just he's
is.
he's nice at breaking breaking tackles, and he's not a big guy, but he can make defenders miss. And I think that's important as a running back to have one of those two things, or if not both. And I think that you have to seriously consider at least making it a committee. So I think Edmonds has carved out a nice role for himself in this backfield, at least as a pass catching back from Sunday night. And I want to shout out one more player, and that's Tyler Lockett. I mean, he was sensational. I think that the one mistake the Cardinals made was just not making an adjustment. I don't know, Trevor. You could better tell me.
Believe me.
Was Drake Kirk?
Yes.
I forget. Was Drake Kirkpatrick on Tyler Lockett the entire game, including
He was on him
overtime?
a lot. He was on him a lot. I will say
Okay.
the very first play of the game where he made that one-handed catch,
Mm,
it was perfect coverage by Patrick Peterson,
it was.
but it was on Patrick Peterson. And then the long touchdown, I believe it was his second touchdown.
Oh,
That was also perfect coverage by Patrick Peterson, which ended up just being a perfect throw and catch by Wilson and Lockett. But I will say most of the night, he was absolutely feasting on Drake Kirkpatrick. And it was very frustrating to watch because it looked like a lot of simple routes. It looked like a lot of slants, a lot of, just a lot of crossing routes. And it just felt like Drake Kirkpatrick was getting beat off the line of scrimmage. And Lockett is very quick. It's hard to catch up with him, especially if he gets a step. And it felt like Kirkpatrick was just a step behind him the whole game. And it was a little frustrating as a fan because I was like, hey, like, let's mix it up. Like, I know Peterson has
mm,
to guard
yep.
DK Metcalf, and Patrick Peterson probably played his best game of the season Sunday night. But yeah, great Draper Kirkpatrick. We ended up benching him actually in overtime, but he was very frustrating to watch. I'm going to
Yep.
make one more point on this game before we move on. And I thought the Seattle coaching was a big reason why this game was sent to overtime and ultimately a loss for Seattle. And I want to highlight one play in particular, and that was the 3rd and 2 play in regulation. It was 34-31, Seattle. We had, I believe we had no timeouts left. It was about 2 minutes left in the game. So Seattle is 2 yards away from winning this football game.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, look, they're going to put it in Wilson's hands. Even if it's an incomplete pass, let Wilson win you this football game. Instead, they run a little stretch handoff to Carlos Hyde. Cardinals sniffed it out. He ends up losing a yard. and they have to punt us the ball back. And I just thought that was coaching a little scared. I mean, Russell Wilson had been cooking us all night. Tyler Lockett had been cooking us all night. You're telling me you can't run a play for Tyler Lockett to get 3 yards and win the game? I thought that was poor play calling. I thought that was coaching scared. And yeah, we ended up stealing a game that we probably shouldn't have won. The Cardinals were trailing the whole game.
Yep.
The Cardinals did not lead the game until we made that game-winning field goal.
Yep.
So I don't know. Divisional games, crazy things happen. Browns, Bengals, another divisional game. There
Yep.
always seems to be that added element of excitement when it's within a division.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you're totally right. And this game, I want to point out one more thing before we move on, actually. And this is the AFC North and the NFC West. Both of these divisions have 3 teams at 5 wins, I believe. I believe
Mm-hmm.
they have 3 teams at 5 wins,
Mm-hmm.
both of them. The AFC North has the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens. And the NFC West has the Seahawks, the Rams, and the
Cards and
Cardinals.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then you have the the
49ers were 4 and
Niners.
3.
The Niners are right there. And that's just that's crazy. Well, I mean, what divisions they like these 2 divisions, particularly the NFC West. I mean, I would argue because their 4th team is so good, they have the edge. But both these divisions are fantastic, and it's just crazy when you look at divisions like the NFC East, and we'll get to talking about that in another podcast in the next couple of weeks. But like, what a drastic gap between the 2 divisions, and that's just it just echoes a lot of fans' frustrations about this playoff system, and
Mm-hmm.
you know the division winners automatically getting in. But great win from the Cardinals, really a statement win. So
100%. 100%.
without a doubt. And moving on from that, I wanted to talk about another game. I wanted to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their game against Las Vegas Raiders this past week. And
It's
I just
one team
want
I don't want to play.
yeah, yeah, I wanted to talk about this game because I wanted to say, like, this team looks really scary. And some people,
They
do you,
do.
do you remember when they lost to the Saints, Trevor? Do you remember when they lost to the Saints week 1 and people said,
Brady's
wow,
washed. They're
wow,
done. They're not good.
Brady without Belichick? Who is he? And then they said, wow, the Bucks just don't seem to gel together. You look at them now. You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now, 5-2 on the season, should really be 6-1. I mean, if I'm being honest, with Tom Brady forgetting what down it was against the Bears. I mean,
Right. Right.
what a gaffe. I mean, who knows if
Interesting
they would have.
mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, but I think that they should be 6-1, but in reality they're 5-2, and they're in the driver's seat though. I mean, they're rolling right now. I mean, the Raiders beat the Chiefs. So the Raiders have proven they can beat really good teams, but the Bucks just were fantastic. I mean, they're running the ball well. Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette looking good. Tom Brady, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 370 yards. I mean, and this is before, mind you, he added a Hall of Fame receiver in Antonio Brown. I mean, this is before that. So he's playing really, really well. I really like what I've seen from Scotty Miller, a guy who's kind of like Julian
Mm-hmm.
Edelman, except he can seemingly go vertical as well, which is not something you saw from Edelman in New England. And it's kind of a new element of this Bucks offense that Brady didn't have in New England, which is guys
The
going
ability
deep.
to go vertical. Yeah.
Exactly. And to have a guy like Scotty Miller, a slot receiver like that, to be able to take the top off a defense is just wow. I mean, that's great. I mean, you have 3 guys in Godwin, Evans, and Miller who now can go over the top, and Antonio Brown. You have 4 receivers
Yeah.
who can take the top off the defense
Yeah.
and work on them underneath. So this receiving core, I mean, they have too many mouths to feed at this point, it feels like. But I mean, wow, like what an offense. And then I want to talk about Gronkowski. He finally looks kind of like the old Gronkowski we've seen in New England all those years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had a really, really nice touchdown catch. His hands are incredibly strong. He's just, with him being healthy now, he looks as good, almost as good as he was. So if he is almost as good as he was, look out. This team, I think, might be Super Bowl favorites come playoff time if they keep this up.
I agree with everything you just said, and I'm going to go a step further. This is the best team in the NFC, the most complete team in the NFC. I think you look at the teams that are theoretically ahead of them, Seattle and Green Bay, who are both 5-1. Both those teams have flaws. Not to mention Tampa Bay just beat Green Bay 38-10. So that's also playing a factor. And Seattle has a horrendous defense. So Tampa Bay is the most complete team in the NFC. Tom Brady looked fantastic. The Raiders aren't a great secondary, but regardless, he looked fantastic. Um, you know, and I don't know what else to say. Tampa Bay is really, really good.
Yep.
You didn't even get to their defense. I think their defense
Yeah.
is so much better than I thought. I thought their secondary was going to be a huge issue this year. But their secondary has been fantastic. Winfield, Carlton Davis. And then let's get into their front 7. I mean, Devin White, Levante David,
Mm-hmm.
Jason Pierre-Paul's had a great year, and Ndamukong Suh has made some plays, on the interior of that defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And this Tampa Bay team, it's coming into form. And look, as we said, week one, they did not look good against the Saints. But with COVID, no preseason, a weird training camp, of course they're not going to look good. They have so many new faces, so many new parts. You have to give this team time to gel. And now you're seeing in the last two games against Green Bay and Oakland how good this team can be.
Yep.
And if I'm any team in the NFC, I feel good. Any playoff team in the NFC should feel good about beating one another unless you play Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is going to go to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling it now. It's going to be a Tampa Bay, Kansas City Super Bowl.
Wow.
And yeah, they look fantastic. And even if Brady doesn't have the kind of statistical game that he has yesterday, they can still win because their defense is so good and they have so many weapons. They're not as Tom Brady dependent. And I think that's a beneficial thing for him in this franchise. But yeah, they look great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're the team to beat in the NFC. I'll say that again.
All right, yeah. I mean, real quick before we move on, I want to just point out that I think their defense is as good as you say. I mean, Devin White is just sensational. I mean, he had three sacks, 2 tackles for loss, nine solo tackles against the Raiders this past Sunday. I mean, he's been doing that week after week. He's been elite, and you just have a good defense all around. I mean, as I said, Antoine Winfield has been a really nice rookie. I mean, you have Carlton Davis, who has become a really, really solid corner. I mean,
did he go to Auburn, by the way? Kind of random.
Did. Yep, he did.
As I thought. So just wanted to throw that out there, but continue.
Yeah. But so
It's a big smile on Ryan's face.
I mean, listen, I always like to point out a good Auburn alum. Seeing as I've been an Auburn fan growing up for a long time now. But anyway, that's besides the point. This defense is really good. You're exactly right. And I think that they are the NFC favorites right now. If we're making predictions, I mean, I'll make a prediction real quick. I think it'll be Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl. That's my prediction right now. So that's if I had to go with two teams. But, I mean, it could change. Obviously, we have over half a season left. So,
right, we have a lot of games left.
Yeah,
for sure,
but as of now, I mean, that's who I'd go with. So I mean, that's just my view on it. But we will see what happens. And I mean, speaking of the Steelers, Trevor, I kind of wanted to use that as a segue and move on to your final game of this week, which is the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I mean, go ahead and tell us about that game.
Yeah, I think this was an interesting game because Tennessee and Pittsburgh obviously both 5-0. But both these teams really didn't play that hard of a schedule per se. I know the Titans beat up the Buffalo Bills, who were undefeated at the time, but we've seen Buffalo not look very good these last few games. So I don't even think that's a great win on Tennessee's part. So point being, neither of these teams have beaten an elite opponent yet. And now they play each other, who are both 5-0. Mm-hmm. And this was a weird game because it looked like Pittsburgh was really dominating this football game. And it's particularly in time of possession. It felt like Pittsburgh – did Tennessee even run a play in the first quarter? Like, I don't even know. They probably ran like 2 or 3 plays. They maybe had one possession in the first quarter. And I think the thing for me is going up against elite defensive fronts, they have to figure out a way to get Derrick Henry more creatively involved because every time Derrick Henry's in the game, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm a defense in general, I'm thinking run. And every time he's out of the game, I know it's going to be a pass. I mean, it seemingly seems that it's not always like that, but it's very close to, it's almost always like that. So they need to figure out how to get Henry a little bit more. They need to figure out how to use Henry a little bit more creatively, in my opinion.
Yes.
And I think they need to use Tannehill a little bit more because I think Ryan Tannehill has played at, I don't want to put every good quarterback in the MVP discussion, but he's had a great year and he's been great for them ever since he took over the starting job midway through last season. So I think my big takeaway from this game was 2 good teams. Tennessee came back at the end. Tennessee's kicking woes though. I think especially when you get closer to playoff time, kicking becomes very important because a lot of these playoff games are going to be decided by 3 points, 6 points, and every point matters. So if you can't, I mean, Gostkowski, you would think is a very dependable leg, but he has been a little, he was really bad and then he was better and then he missed one yesterday.
Yep.
So they definitely need to figure out the kicking woes. But it was an overall good game. Here's why, and now this is segueing a little bit. I'm getting a little off topic, but here's why I don't think Pittsburgh's a Super Bowl team is because I just don't trust Roethlisberger enough. And I don't know. Their offense for me, if they would have signed an Antonio Brown or a Des Bryant, right there at the deadline or someone like that, I don't trust Roethlisberger enough. I think the offense doesn't quite have the explosiveness of a Kansas City. Their defense is undeniably elite. Um, but I have to give the edge to Kansas City over Pittsburgh. And overall, though, a really good game. I'll hand it off to you, though, to close
Yeah,
this one out.
I mean, yeah, really good game, as you said. I thought Tennessee was going to be able to come back and win this game, but that miss Gostkowski had in that game proved costly. I mean, they would have tied the game,
Mm-hmm.
or the game would have ended up tied. So I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
ended up being very costly. But I wanted to point out two different things. One, AJ Brown's fantastic. I mean, that's all I have to
He
say about
is.
him. He's really, really good. I had my doubts about him. Even dating back to the end of last year, I was like, is this guy just like kind of a 1 year wonder type of thing? I mean, he's just gonna make a few big plays and kind of fade away because I kind of had my doubts about Ryan Tannehill. I thought, will he be able to replicate his what good play from last year? And the answer to both those questions were, I mean, well, no and yes. AJ Brown was not a one-hit wonder, and Ryan Tannehill was able to replicate what he did last year this year. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is their first loss, and it was to a really good team. I mean, Tannehill got
Yeah.
sacked. Tannehill got sacked twice. Big Ben did not get sacked at all. So I mean, there's a difference right there. Big Ben did turn the ball over 3 times, and this is to your point. Big Ben has not looked. He's looked okay this year.
He has.
His elbow doesn't seem to be a problem, which is a major plus, and he's definitely a massive upgrade over what they had last year. But I disagree with your point about them needing to get an Antonio Brown or Des Bryant. And here's why. This team did lack explosiveness yesterday because they didn't throw the ball to their most explosive receiver. They have a rookie from Notre Dame named Chase Claypool is who has proven to
They
be
did
a
not do a very good job getting him involved.
yeah,
I'll admit that.
and I'm being really serious. I think Claypool's a guy you have to get involved after he's won you a bunch of games. I mean, he's been elite the last few weeks. He's made some great catches in the first few weeks of the season when he wasn't getting playing time. And the guy had one catch for -2 yards yesterday or on Sunday. I mean, like, you got to get him involved more. Juju and Deontay Johnson had 29 targets combined. I get they're good players, but throwing the ball to them 29 times and Chase Claypool 1 time, I mean, you got to distribute the ball a little bit more. You got to have some more explosiveness in your offense. And Claypool's the guy to do that. He's efficient with his targets. He makes big plays consistently. And his measurables, I mean, people keep talking about his measurables. He's fast, he's 6'4", and he can jump. And these are all measurables that everyone's been saying is comparable to Megatron. And I'm not saying he will be Megatron. I'm just saying he has a similar build to him. And a guy like that, you just have to utilize him. No matter how talented your wide receiver group is. So for me, you got to use them more. But other than that, I really like their offense. And their O-line's held up pretty well against a solid Tennessee pass rush and other solid pass rushes in weeks prior.
Mm-hmm.
And Tennessee's a good team too. Don't get me wrong.
They're good. They're really good.
They're just not on the championship level. The Steelers. That's all I have to say. They're just not there. And I don't know if they ever can get there. But that's just my opinion. I think the Steelers, as I said, are my favorites to go to the Super Bowl in the AFC because their defense is
Mm-hmm.
so good, and I think their offense is good enough.
One final point before we finish up the podcast on
Yep.
this game. I kind of agree with your point on Chase Claypool. I will say I think Tennessee definitely watched film this week and they were going to commit. They were going to commit to the fact that they were not going to let a rookie beat them. So I do think they were shadowing Claypool a lot tighter than in the last couple of weeks. What I will say is why Pittsburgh didn't give him an end around or didn't give him a carry. Find another way to get him involved. How Deebo Samuel, I feel like every game, 1 or 2 plays, they run an end around to him. Get him on the perimeter, let him use his measurables, as you were saying, to his advantage. So I agree. Pittsburgh did a poor job of doing that yesterday. Tennessee, they'll give him a little bit of credit. I thought they shadowed him pretty well.
Mm.
And look, Pittsburgh still put up 27 points. So the offense wasn't that bad without Claypool yesterday. But yeah, that's all I have to say on that one. Both really good teams, though.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Without a doubt, both very good teams. And I mean, yeah, we can move on from this game. Trevor and I have one last thing we want to talk about, just real quick. 2 quick signings by the Buccaneers and the Ravens in Des Bryant and Antonio Brown going to these teams. Trevor, I want to ask you real quick. Which signing is going to make a bigger difference?
This is tough
Yeah.
because I feel like the Buccaneers don't need Antonio Brown. And I feel like
Mm.
I'm going to go Des Bryant, and here's why. Because if you look at the receivers on the Baltimore Ravens, they have Mark Andrews. They don't have a big vertical. I shouldn't say vertical, but they don't really have like a big body receiver. Tampa has Mike Evans. So he's kind of like a big presence.
Sure, sure.
And so Lamar Jackson's thrown to a lot of small windows, guys like Hollywood Brown, for example. Who's there? Willie Snead, is he still on that team, I
Yep,
believe?
yep, he's still there.
Willie Snead.
Yep.
So Lamar Jackson's thrown to a lot of small bodies, and I feel like Des Bryant will fit a role that they need. They need a big presence, maybe a guy in the red zone. You can throw a fade up to, let a guy go jump up and grab a pass. Des Bryant is a big body. I think he's 6'5", 6'6". And I think, especially for Lamar, who lacks accuracy at times, having a bigger, range to pass to someone to might benefit him. So I do think Des Bryant will actually be will have more of an impact than Antonio
Yeah.
Brown. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's why.
No, it really doesn't sound that crazy, and I'll go real quick because we've run a little bit long. But I just want to say, Des Bryant, I think, will be the better player as well. I think Des Bryant is, I think he's the bigger body, like you said, and he can help this team, this Ravens team, on the outside. I think Antonio Brown's not needed for the Bucks, and I don't think he'll provide much that they don't already have. So, yeah, that's about it. But with that, I think we're going to end this podcast, and we'll be back next week with more NFL, NBA, and MLB talk.